I visited a movie theater on the outskirts of town. It played a movie I have never heard of. If I am being honest, I didn't even want to see a movie. I just wanted to go on a drive. It had been a long and stressful week at work, and I thought the best medicine would be a nice cruise through the countryside. I think I may have gotten a little carried away because, before I knew it, all that surrounded me were trees and an orange glow of a summertime sunset. I figured I had just drive and enjoy the atmosphere until the sun sank completely, but by the time darkness descended and the only light that remained was that of my headlights, I noticed a new glow off in the distance. I could tell immediately that what I was seeing wasn't natural. This was the glow of neon lights. Curiosity got the better of me, and as I neared and my face grew brighter and brighter from the light of that ominous glow, the source came into view. It was a theater. It didn't look old, but it wasn't too modern either. If I had to put it into words, it looked like how life felt back in 2005, before the world went gray. The parking lot was packed, which I found strange because I hadn't seen a single other vehicle the entire time I drove on that dark forest road. Not only that, but I had never even heard of this place. I thought that I was very in the know, so to speak, about the local hot spots near town. But this place was a complete anomaly to me. I figured, what the hell, why not? A spontaneous movie night to cap off the day. I whipped into the parking lot and circled around a few times trying to find a place to park. I swear, it was like I took the last spot in the entire lot, and in that moment, this experience felt like destiny. As I exited my vehicle, the scent of popcorn filled my nostrils, and it was like the aroma picked me up and carried me straight to the ticket booth. The lady in the booth looked a little surprised to see me, like I was some unexpected guest at a party she was throwing. Despite this, her manners were top-notch.
Good evening, sir. How can I serve you tonight?
Staring up at the list of featured films, I racked my brain trying to recognize a title. When I came to terms with the fact that I was old and out of touch with current media, I said the only thing that felt right. Surprise me, a smile stretched across her face.
Certainly, sir.
Reaching under the counter and rummaging around for a moment, she slid a ticket under the glass.
This one's a favorite of mine.
I glanced down at the ticket, and for a moment, I thought I was being punked. It had no details on it whatsoever. It was just a blank strip of cardstock paper. To further add to my suspicion, when I asked how much I owed, I could have sworn the lady shot me a wink before announcing,
"It's on the house,"
and gesturing for me to come inside. When I pulled open the door, I was astonished to find that this lobby was unlike any movie theater lobby I had seen in my entire life. There were no arcade games or digital ticket kiosks. Hell, there wasn't even a snack counter. And despite the completely packed parking lot, the only other person in the lobby was the usher. He had curly hair, freckles, and Coke bottle glasses, and he had been staring directly through me from the moment I walked through the door. I approached him slowly, and the closer I got, the wider his smile grew.
Good evening, sir. May I see your ticket?
Handing him my ticket, he stared down at it for a moment before chuckling.
I see, a man of taste. This one's one of my favorites. You will be in Theater 9.
He pointed down a long hallway to his right, and I thanked him before meandering toward the instructed theater. As I approached the door, an unidentified chill ran down my spine. It was like my body was trying to communicate something that my mind didn't quite understand. I hesitated with my hand wrapped tightly around the handle. I took a deep breath before convincing myself I was being a baby and pulling the door open. The first thing I noticed was just how packed the auditorium was. Every seat was taken, all except one in the center of the middle row. As I made my way to the seat, the next thing I noticed was that every pair of eyes had landed upon me, and each person watched me as I sat down. The smell of popcorn was stronger than ever, and why wouldn't it be? Every person in attendance seemed to have a bucket resting in their lap. A little uncomfortable, I sat patiently as people began to slowly take their focus off me. Before the lights dimmed, a little girl in the row in front of me turned to me again. She wore a cute little red bow and overalls, and in the sweetest voice I had ever heard, she announced,
"You are so good in this movie,"
before turning back around and fixating her eyes on the screen. Before I could ask what she meant, the lights went down, and the screen lit up. Instead of 30 minutes of ads and trailers, the projector flashed with static before the feature film began rolling. It opened up with a familiar road, my road, the very road that I had just been on 30 minutes prior, along with a sole pair of headlights that crept down the dark lane highway. The camera followed the car as it pulled into the parking lot of a familiar movie theater, and then its focus shifted onto the man who stepped out of the vehicle. My heart beat out of my chest as I recognized the clothes he wore on his back and the hair that lay lazily atop his head. The camera followed this man as he maneuvered through the empty lobby of the theater and never let him escape the frame as he entered Theater 9 and took his seat in a sea of people. That's when something changed. Ever so slowly, the man's head turned up toward the camera as he smiled a toothy smile before mouthing the words,
"This one's a favorite of mine."
And cocking his head back toward the screen. My eyes were glued to the screen, but I could feel eyes falling upon me, dozens of stares permeating my soul. I didn't know if I was glued to the screen out of intrigue or out of fear of eye contact. Having had enough, I stood up from my seat and glided past the people beside me, all of whom watched me with curiosity and what can best be described as hunger. Once I reached the edge of my row, in unison, every person in attendance stood up and began following me out of the auditorium. I made it back to the lobby, a crowd trailing behind me. My walk turned into a light jog as the usher joined the crowd, and advanced into a run as the ticket lady did the same. By the time I reached my car, there must have been 100 or so people surrounding the vehicle as I closed the door and locked it. They shook the vehicle back and forth as I worked to pull out of my parking spot. I felt the car jump lightly as I ran over that little girl's foot, but no screams filled the air. Just quiet, malicious, hungry stares as they watched me exit the lot and book it back in the direction from which I came. I made a vow to myself to never return to that part of the dark country road. I tried my best to push that theater out of my mind, and for a while, I was succeeding. However, yesterday afternoon, after a long shift at the factory, I had to make a stop at a little mom-and-pop gas station on the way home. I walked in and paid for my fuel, and as I was walking back out to the car, the lady behind the counter made a comment that undid my progress, completely collapsed my long-sought-after sense of safety, and has made me afraid to leave my house ever since.
I loved you in that movie. It's a favorite of mine.
My husband found my diary. He is probably gonna kill me. My husband and I have been together since we were kids. Back in those days, I don't know. I saw so much in him that it blinded me. I guess he was 2 years younger. But damned if he wasn't what my heart desired. He was just so shy in those days, close to bashful. With our age difference, it felt like I was the world in his eyes. Not in the corny, Klitsch I was everything to him kind of way. More like he had been trapped inside himself for years. And the way he looked at me was less due to pure love and more out of sheer curiosity. When he asked me out, though, he was so timid that his eyes never even left the floor, which, me being me, I found to be the most adorable thing I had ever seen. God, I should have never agreed. Looking back now, I feel like such a gargantuan moron that it's hard for me to even think clearly. All I can say is that it was never meant to go this far. I was supposed to end it after what happened not even a year into our relationship, and while I was just trying to help him, no less. He had always been naturally quiet, but heaven knows the temper he had on him. I had only caught glimpses of it prior to this incident, but even then it made me uneasy. This time, though I was borderline paralyzed, I thought it had be a cute date idea for me to let him use my car for some driving practice, with me in the passenger seat, of course. Now, he was brand new to this, never been behind a wheel a day in his life. I wasn't about to let him just take a drive through town and hope for the best. However, after a mere 2 laps around an empty parking lot, that's exactly what he insisted we did. No license, no experience, nothing. In my car, with a girl who was 2 years older than him. No, so that's exactly what I told him. But he just kept asking, and asking, and asking, until finally I told him it was probably best I take him home. His response to that utter disrespect, an open palm slap across the jaw, followed by a low growl that I had never heard from him. "We are driving," was all he said before peeling out of the parking lot, his eyes never leaving the road. That entire day, he acted as though nothing had happened, laughing, flirting, resting his hand on my thigh, not even questioning my distress and silence. It took me stroking his ego about how good he was at driving for him to finally agree to take me home. And from the moment I walked through that front door, I knew I had to leave him. I was afraid of how he had react if I told him. I mean, he knew where I lived and had already proven he had taken a step towards violence. That's why my plan was to escape him through college. I had be out of town, and he had have to spend at least the next 2 years without me. But guess what? He got his fucking license and his parents bought him a car. He was at my university day after day, coming by immediately after he got out of school just to wait outside my classes. It would have been better if he showed up with that same coldness he had when I was teaching him to drive. Instead, every day, he had show up with happiness, warmth, and hand-picked flowers from a field by the university. He had talked to me about my day, engage in the conversation, compliment me, make me feel wanted, and it made me fall in love with him all over again. After 2 years without incident, I thought that what happened that day had been a one-off moment, that it was a mistake that he learned from in silence, that he actually wanted this to work. That's why I agreed when he asked me to marry him. I am fucking stupid. I know. I am a fucking idiot. And everything that's happened to me is no one else's fault but my own. Something clicked inside him when I agreed. I could see it almost immediately. He wasn't chasing me anymore. I was his. And he knew that he could do whatever he wanted. He did such a good job at hiding it that I almost have to give him props for it. He had put on this display of the perfect husband even when no one was around. He had show up for me emotionally. He was everything I wanted him to be. But at the slightest inconvenience, he let his ownership of me be known and understood loud and clear. I can't tell you how many times I have had to put on an extra coat of makeup, wear sunglasses inside, hide my neck with a scarf in 80-degree heat. I hated him more than almost anything, but still managed to hate myself more for actually still loving this evil son of a bitch. Writing was all I had. It was my only escape from reality, the only thing I had to process everything. It made me feel big when I was small, allowed me to say everything I wanted to say to his face without fear. I cherished it with my entire heart. Do you understand how that feels? To know that you have to hide the one thing that brings you sanctity out of fear that the person who brought about that need in the first place would go off the deep end if he ever found it. I thought I did so well. I thought that he had never find it. I filled up page after page with nothing but venom for my husband and disdain for my life, only to hide those pages deep in my shirt drawer. And he found it. He fucking found it. He came home one day, quieter than usual, in a hurry to shower. I tried to greet him, and he brushed right past me like a man on a mission. I heard the water running, and that was my cue to start setting the table for dinner. I laid out the plates, silverware, a beer for my husband, and a glass of wine for myself. The water still ran. I finished up dinner and started setting the plates. The water still ran. I sat and waited for 10 minutes, my hands folded in my lap while I stared down at the table. The water still ran. The food was starting to get cold. My husband's beer was accumulating condensation and was no doubt beginning to go flat. "Honey, dinner's ready," I called out. No response. "Honey." "Dinner." No response. "Honey." Suddenly, I started to hear something other than water pelting the ceramic bathroom tub. It started softly, then grew louder, and louder, and louder. I entered our bedroom to find my husband sitting at my vanity, head in his hands, my diary resting on the tabletop, and he was laughing like I had never heard before, laughing like a man who had completely lost it. I asked him what he was doing, but who am I kidding? I knew the answer. As he rose from his chair and approached me, all I could do was accept that this was the end, accept that he was going to go too far this time, and accept that I was the cause of all of this. However, instead of wringing my neck and bashing my brains in, he kissed me right on the forehead before brushing past me and sitting at the dinner table. I sat down, too. He slowly began eating while I watched him with tears in my twitching eyes. He had already cleared his plate before I worked up the nerve to ask him what had been eating at me for this entire dinner. "Why were you reading my diary on a dime?" He started to laugh again, stifling it by taking a swig from his beer bottle. "Oh, trust me, honey, we will have a nice chat after this last dinner." It is said that every human has 5 senses, but few believe we also have another one, the ability to detect someone watching us from behind. Always thought it was weird and never believed in it until today. Few of my friends thought it would be a good idea to go camping in the woods. As much as I like nature, it is something which is also quite ugly, and I am afraid of getting killed in a cabin somewhere in the wood late at night. I know it's a weird thing to be afraid of, but it is still what I am afraid of. Even got teased by my friends when I said yes to the plan. I had nothing else to do this weekend, and it was time for me to face my fears. After settling in the cabin, we decided we will just sleep through this night and go camping tomorrow. It was a 2-floored cabin with 2 rooms, 1 living room and 1 bathroom in the ground floor. Me and Matt had to share the room upstairs, and Sam decided to sleep alone downstairs. I would rather sleep with someone rather than sleeping alone in the middle of the woods. It was late at night when I woke up to the sound of something moving around downstairs. Matt was awake too. He signaled me to not make a noise while we listened. The noise was nothing like a human moving around, which was my initial guess because Sam might have needed to use the bathroom, but it sounded like it had 4 legs or even more. After the noises finally stopped, I got up and decided to check downstairs. Maybe a deer had walked inside. I called out Sam's name 2-3 times, but he didn't call back, so I checked Sam's room, but when I opened the door he wasn't there. I turned to get Matt, but that's when I heard a gut-wrenching scream upstairs. I don't know what came upon me, but I decided to run out of the cabin into the woods. I ran till my feet had started to hurt, and when I finally broke out of this trance, I discovered myself in the middle of the woods alone with nothing but few matches as my only source of light in this pit of darkness. I laughed at myself. My brain had stopped functioning, so I sat down under the darkness. I felt I was being watched, but ignored it. It's my mind playing tricks on me probably. I collected myself and then panicked when I came to a horrifying conclusion that whatever that thing was, it had killed Matt. But then again, when me and Sam checked with the owner of the cabin about whether there were bears in this woods, he had firmly told us no. But then again, humans make mistake. Maybe he didn't check thoroughly enough. Whatever, it wasn't my priority right now. Luckily, when I remembered that when I went downstairs to check on Sam, I had grabbed my phone. Searching for it, I found it in my jacket's pocket. Zipped up, the phone only had a charge of 10% with no signal. I can still try reaching 911, but for some reason it keeps getting failed. I turned on my phone's flashlight and stared at the woods. I forgot which direction I came from. I don't know what to do now, but standing isn't an option anymore, so I started walking forward. It was 2:50 for when I checked the time, and that's when I felt something staring at me. I turned around and shined my flashlight. No one was there. Maybe it was my body playing tricks on me that finally my worst fear had came true, or maybe because everything that has happened, which made me hyper alert about everything. That's when I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Sam. When I asked what happened, he told me he saw something moving in the woods and decided to check on it, and whatever it was, it ran away from Sam. And when he finally decided to turn around and go home, he found himself dead lost with a torch light, and upon seeing my flashlight, he made his way towards me. Dumb, I know, but he is the only person I know who is capable of chasing something so pointless at the dead of night. I told what happened to Matt. Sam couldn't believe it. He thought I was joking and told me to follow him. I couldn't argue with him. I knew what happened with Matt, but getting back to the cabin was my priority right now, and I don't want to argue with him, so I followed him. We found the cabin and also Matt's body hanging lifelessly on the tree nearby. Sam had screamed and ran. I couldn't believe my eyes, but I had to follow Sam because whatever this thing was, it was still somewhere in the woods. When I was chasing Sam, I tripped and hurt my ankle, so now I am sitting under the tree and Sam's scream were no longer audible. I turned around because I again had this feeling of someone watching me, and this time I decided to trust my instincts and got up and went back towards the direction where the cabin was. On the way I can hear twigs snapping. I dared not to look back and only stopped when I was in the cabin. The cabin was in a messed up state. Whatever it was, it had destroyed the beautiful cabin with its claw marks all around. I closed the door behind me and again had this feeling of something looking at me, but this time it was also accompanied by a sound. It was whispering help. Thinking it was Sam, I opened the door only to be met by no one. The cold breeze blew by me as I closed the door and locked it. I went back to my room, which was now a bloody mess. Blood was everywhere and everything was scattered everywhere. I knew time was running out and I have something, so I opened my phone. It finally had signal. I took a deep breath of relief as help is finally within reach, but when I started dialing I heard the door burst. Whatever this thing is, it had came to finish the job. I panicked and hid under the bed and called 911. It failed. I called again, but it failed again. I can hear footsteps climbing the stairs. I don't know what to do now, but hiding under the bed is the worst option, so I changed my spot to a small confined space up of the room. That's when I heard a sound I didn't want to hear. It had broken down the bedroom door. It is currently searching for me. It would only take few minutes for this thing to find me eventually. I can't run. I can't fight. I forgot to breathe. I checked the phone for the last time. 2% battery and the signal was gone again. I don't know what to do, so I wrote this down for someone to see. It is still searching for me. I can hear this thing breathing near me. I think it knows I am here. If you are reading this, I am already dead.